Marcus Vale's first coherent thought was that someone had replaced his bones with tuning forks. Every breath sent vibrations through his skeleton, harmonizing with a low hum that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. He opened his eyes to find himself staring at what appeared to be a ceiling made of living crystal, its faceted surface pulsing with soft amber light that matched his heartbeat. "Fascinating," said a voice like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "You're synchronizing already." Marcus turned his head, wincing at the spike of pain behind his temples, and found himself looking at the most beautiful and unsettling being he'd ever encountered. She was humanoid in the way that a perfect sculpture might be humanoid, all the right proportions, but somehow more precise than nature usually allowed. Her skin had a translucent quality, revealing delicate networks of light that flowed beneath, like luminous blood vessels. Most striking were her eyes, multifaceted like a dragonfly's, but warm and impossibly deep. "I'm Venth," she said, settling onto a chair that seemed to grow from the floor as she approached it. "Senior Resonance Healer, 7th Tier. And you, Marcus Vale, are the loudest dreamer we've ever encountered." "Dreamer?" His voice came out as a croak. His throat felt like he'd been gargling cosmic dust. Venth tilted her head, and Marcus noticed that her ears were slightly pointed, with tiny crystal formations growing along the edges like natural jewelry. "Your species processes subconscious experiences through what you call dreams. Most sentient beings do this quietly, internally. But you—" She smiled, revealing teeth that sparkled like pearls. "You broadcast." She gestured to a floating panel that materialized beside her. The surface showed what looked like a three-dimensional sound wave, pulsing and writhing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This is your neural output from the past 72 hours. We could detect it from 3 star systems away." Marcus struggled to sit up, finding himself on what felt like a bed made of solidified music. It supported him perfectly, while humming a lullaby directly into his bones. "Where am I? What happened to my lab?" "Dimensional research accident," Venth said matter-of-factly. "Your quantum field generator created a cascade failure that tore a hole between realities. You fell through, along with a considerable amount of debris, and what I believe you call coffee." She wrinkled her nose. "Terrible stuff. We had to decontaminate 3 levels. The memory came flooding back the experiment, the readings that shouldn't have been possible, the moment when space itself seemed to fold inside out. He'd been working on quantum entanglement communication when something had gone catastrophically right." "My team, safe," Venth assured him. "The breach sealed itself after you came through. But you've been unconscious for quite some time. Your brain was trying to process experiences from 17 different dimensional states simultaneously." Marcus looked around the room, taking in details his shocked mind had missed. The walls curved organically, covered in patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Floating spheres of light drifted lazily through the air, occasionally chiming when they bumped into each other. Everything felt alive, aware, gently curious about his presence. "This is a medical facility?" "Healing sanctuary," Venth corrected. "We specialize in dimensional displacement trauma. You're not our first human, though you are our first human who dreams in mathematical equations." She stood, moving with a grace that suggested her bones might be made of something lighter than calcium. "The others mostly dream about food or their mothers." "Others?" Venth paused at what might have been a door, though it looked more like a shimmer in the wall. "Rest now, Marcus Vale. Tomorrow we begin teaching you to dream quietly. The alternative is giving every telepath within 50 parsecs a migraine." She stepped through the shimmer and vanished, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts, a humming walls, and the uncomfortable realization that his loudest dreams were apparently just getting started. Dr. Octavia Reeves awoke to the sensation of time moving backward through her veins. Seconds ticked in reverse, minutes unraveled, and for a terrifying moment, she felt herself becoming younger, older, then settling into some temporal middle ground that left her nauseated and confused. "The displacement sickness will pass," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Though with your particular neural architecture, it may take longer than usual." Octavia opened her eyes to find herself in a chamber that defied geometry. The walls curved upward into impossible angles, creating spaces that her brain insisted couldn't exist. Floating in the center of this architectural paradox was her companion, a being that looked like it had been carved from living shadow and starlight. "I am Kairos," the entity said, its form shifting between solid and translucent. "Temporal resonance specialist. You've been unconscious for what you would call 6 weeks, though from my perspective, we've been having this conversation for several centuries. That's..." Octavia tried to process this information and failed. "That's not how time works." Kairos laughed, a sound like distant thunder rolling backward. "Time is a river that flows in all directions simultaneously. Your species simply insists on swimming in only one direction." The being gestured, and Octavia's memories began to surface: the research station orbiting a dying star, the ancient artifacts they'd been studying, the moment when everything went wrong. "The Stellarus station," she whispered. "My team was evacuated 17 minutes before the star went supernova," Kairos assured her. "Though from your perspective, that evacuation happened after you fell through the temporal rift we created to save you." Octavia sat up slowly, her archaeologist's mind trying to catalog the impossibilities around her. The bed she rested on seemed to be made of crystallized time itself. She could see moments of her own past reflected in its faceted surface. "You created a rift through time?" "Through time, space, and several probability matrices," Kairos confirmed. "Your research into precursor civilizations had triggered something in those artifacts. They began broadcasting a signal that threatened to unravel causality in your local cluster. We had to act quickly." "The chronostones," Octavia breathed, remembering the crystalline artifacts that had defied every attempt at dating. "They were some kind of temporal anchor." "Temporal lighthouses," Kairos corrected. "Built by a civilization that existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. When you activated them, they began calling out to their creators, who haven't existed for 1,000,000 years, or will exist in 1,000,000 years, depending on your perspective." Octavia's head spun. "And my dreams?" Kairos moved closer, its form solidifying into something almost human-shaped. "You dream of the past and future simultaneously. Most beings experience linear memory. You experience temporal memory. Every night, you relive moments that haven't happened yet and remember futures that have already passed. A floating display materialized, showing wave patterns that looked like temporal equations made manifest. This is your neural output. You're not just dreaming loudly, you're dreaming across time. Other beings in this facility are having their sleep disturbed by visions of ancient civilizations and possible futures." Octavia stared at the patterns, recognizing some of them from her archaeological work. "I'm seeing the precursor's timeline." "You're becoming their timeline," Kairos said gently. "The chronostones bonded with your neural patterns before the extraction. You now carry their temporal memory matrix." The weight of this revelation settled on her like a heavy blanket. "What does that mean?" Kairos was quiet for a long moment, its form flickering between past and future states. "It means you hold the key to preventing a temporal cascade that could unravel reality itself. But first, you need to learn to control your dreams. The other humans here are beginning to synchronize with your temporal broadcasts." "Other humans?" "3. Others so far, all rescued from similar dimensional incidents, all dreaming impossibly loud. Kiros gestured toward what might have been a window, though it showed not the outside, but a view of probability streams flowing like rivers of light. Tomorrow you'll meet them. Tonight, try to dream quietly. The past and future will wait. As Kiros faded into the temporal currents, Octavia lay back on her bed of crystallized moments and closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 1,000,000 possible tomorrows pressing against her consciousness. Captain Jin Nakamura's first sensation upon waking was that he was drowning in starlight. Pure energy flowed around him like liquid fire, warm and electric, carrying whispers of distant galaxies and the dreams of dying suns. He tried to move, and found himself floating in what appeared to be a sphere of contained aurora. "Do not be alarmed," came a voice that manifested as patterns of color dancing across his vision. "You are safe within my resonance field." The energy coalesced into a roughly humanoid shape, though human was a generous interpretation. Nexus appeared to be made of living light, constantly shifting between different spectrums of radiance. Sometimes Jin could see through the being entirely, glimpsing the cosmic background radiation that seemed to flow through its core. "I am Nexus, Energy Harmonics Counselor. You have been unconscious for approximately 96 of your hours." Though measuring time becomes complex when one exists partially outside conventional spacetime, Jin tried to speak and found his voice worked normally, despite floating in what appeared to be a pocket of contained cosmic phenomena. "My ship, the Endeavor, colors swirled in patterns that somehow conveyed reassurance. Your vessel was caught in a quantum storm generated by the collision of two parallel realities. We managed to extract you nanoseconds before the dimensional boundaries collapsed. Your crew witnessed what they perceived as your instantaneous disintegration." The memory hit him like a physical blow, the bridge alarms, the impossible sensor readings, the moment when space itself seemed to fracture around them. He'd been investigating reports of reality distortions in the Kepler sector when his ship had flown directly into what turned out to be a dimensional intersection. "They think I'm dead." Jin realized Nexus pulsed with what might have been sympathy, shifting through deeper blue spectrums. "From their perspective, you ceased to exist. From our perspective, you became unstuck from your native reality." The being gestured, and Jin found himself able to move freely within the energy sphere. "The extraction process has had interesting effects on your neural patterns." "Effects?" "You dream in multiple realities simultaneously," Nexus explained, its form brightening with what Jin interpreted as fascination. "Most beings experience dreams as internal neural processing. You broadcast across dimensional barriers. Every night, you visit parallel versions of yourself and share their experiences." A display of pure light formed in the air between them, showing overlapping wave patterns that made Jin's eyes water. "This represents your dream activity. Each color represents a different dimensional frequency. You're somehow accessing memories and experiences from alternate versions of yourself." Jin stared at the impossible diagram. "How many versions?" "We've detected at least 17 distinct variants so far." Captain Jin Nakamura, who never joined the space service. Jin Nakamura, the archaeologist. Jin Nakamura, who died in the Titan colony disaster. Jin Nakamura, who became a painter on Epsilon Ceti. Nexus paused, cycling through several color patterns. "And Jin Nakamura, who successfully prevented the dimensional cascade that brought you here." "Prevented it how?" "That information exists in your dreams, but accessing it consciously may require synchronization with the other displaced humans we veg." "Recovered." Jin felt his heart skip. "Others?" Nexus brightened, shifting into what he was beginning to recognize as pleased yellow spectrums. 3 others so far. A physicist whose dreams contain mathematical equations. An archaeologist who dreams across time, and you a captain who dreams across realities." The being moved closer, its energy field making Jin's skin tingle. Together, your combined dream broadcasts are creating interference patterns that some of our specialists believe may be intentional. Intentional? A message, Nexus said. It's form stabilizing into something almost solid, transmitted by the versions of yourselves who successfully prevented the cascade. They're trying to teach you how to do the same. Jin floated in silence, processing this information while lights danced around him like fireflies made of pure possibility. What happens if we can't? Nexus dimmed slightly, cycling through somber purple hues. Reality unravels. Not just your reality, all realities. Every possible version of existence collapses into a single point of nothingness. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on Jin's shoulders like a gravitational field. No pressure then. Tomorrow you will meet the others, Nexus said, beginning to fade back into pure energy. Tonight, try to dream of solutions rather than problems. The universe is listening. As consciousness slipped away, Jin found himself wondering which version of himself would wake up tomorrow, and whether that version would be brave enough to save everything that had ever existed or ever could exist. Zara Okafor opened her eyes to find herself in a room that existed in all directions at once. Up was also down, left curved into right, and the ceiling showed a perfect view of the floor from an impossible angle. Floating in the center of this spatial paradox was a geometric form that hurt to look at directly, a collection of shifting angles and surfaces that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her brain could process. Greetings, stellar cartographer Zara Okafor, the shape spoke, in a voice like mathematical equations solving themselves. I am Theorem, consciousness integration specialist. You have been unconscious for 127 hours while we repaired the dimensional damage to your neural pathways. Zara tried to sit up and found herself floating in a gravity-neutral field that adjusted to her movements. The observatory, she said, memory flooding back. The pulsar array was destroyed when you accidentally created a map of impossible space. Theorem confirmed, its geometric form rotating through configurations that made Zara's eyes water. Your stellar cartography equipment detected gravitational patterns that shouldn't exist, the shadows cast by realities that never were. She remembered now the strange readings, the pulsar signals that formed patterns resembling star charts of non-existent galaxies. The moment when her instruments had tried to map unmappable space, and reality had folded in on itself. You were creating navigational charts for parallel universes, Theorem continued, its voice carrying harmonics of pure logic. The process tore a hole between dimensional barriers. We extracted you milliseconds before the paradox consumed your entire sector. Zara found herself in what appeared to be a shared recovery space, much larger than she'd expected. 3 other beds floated nearby, each occupied by sleeping humans. The others, she whispered, Marcus Vale, quantum physicist, Octavia Reeves, xenorteologist, Jin Nakamura, starship captain. Theorem cycled through several geometric configurations, all rescued from dimensional accidents, all dreaming with unprecedented neural output. A vast display materialized around them, showing overlapping wave patterns in 3 dimensions. This represents your combined dream activity over the past 72 hours. Observe the convergence points. Zara studied the patterns with the cartographers. Eye for detail. They're synchronizing. Precisely. Your dreams are beginning to overlap, creating shared experiences across multiple consciousness streams. Theorem moved closer, its impossible geometry somehow conveying urgency. We believe this synchronization is not accidental. What do you mean? You 4 were not randomly selected by fate. Your specific skills, quantum mechanics, temporal archaeology, multidimensional navigation, and stellar cartography complement each other perfectly. Theorem's form shifted into something resembling a four-dimensional star map. Your dreams are constructing something. A map, equation, a temporal anchor point. We cannot determine what, but the pattern suggests intentional design. Zara looked at her sleeping companions. Marcus twitched in his sleep, equations of light flickering around his bed. Octavia was surrounded by ghostly images of past and future. Jin floated in a sphere of parallel possibilities. Who's designing it? You are, Theorem said simply. Or rather, versions of you from realities where the dimensional cascade was successfully prevented. They're using your dreams as a communication channel, teaching you what you need to know. The display shifted, showing a complex three-dimensional maze of interconnected possibilities. This is what we've reconstructed from your dream fragments so far. It appears to be a navigational chart for something called convergence point, a location that exists simultaneously in all realities. Zara's cartographer instincts kicked in, and she began to see the pattern. It's not a location. It's a moment. A specific point in space-time where all possibilities intersect. And if that moment can be reached and properly anchored, Theorem continued, the cascade can be prevented. Reality can be stabilized. But we have to get there together, Zara realized. All four of us, using our combined knowledge. Theorem pulsed with what might have been approval. Tomorrow, you will work together consciously for the first time. Tonight, continue dreaming. The map is almost complete. As sleep claimed her again, Zara found herself floating through star charts of impossible galaxies, following navigation. Routes that led not through space, but through the dreams of parallel selves who had already found their way home. Marcus woke to find himself in a vast circular chamber, surrounded by his three fellow dreamers and all of their alien caretakers. Venth's crystalline form caught and refracted the light from Nexus, while Kiros flickered between temporal states and Theorem rotated through geometric impossibilities. The humans sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect square, with their caregivers forming the points of a larger circle around them. The time for passive recovery has ended, Venth announced, her voice harmonizing with the chamber's crystalline. Walls. The cascade approaches its critical threshold. Octavia looked haggard, her eyes reflecting depths of time that hadn't existed when Marcus first glimpsed her in the medical bay. I've been dreaming of endings, she said quietly. Billions of them. Every possible way reality can unravel. Jin floated in a contained aurora that Nexus maintained around him, his expression grim. And I've been dreaming of the versions of us that failed. There are a lot of them. Zara's chair drifted slightly as she studied a holographic star chart that seemed to exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. But I've been mapping the successful paths. There's only one route that works, and it requires all of us. The convergence point, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him as equations wrote themselves across his vision. It's not a place or a time. It's a state of existence where all possibilities collapse into a single, stable reality. Theorem's geometric form pulsed with approval. Correct. And reaching it requires a conscious merging of your unique abilities. Kiros flickered between past and future states. From my temporal perspective, this moment exists as both absolute success and complete failure. The outcome depends entirely on your willingness to trust each other completely. Nexus brightened, cycling through spectrums of hope and determination. Your dreams have been building a bridge between realities. Now you must cross it together. The chamber around them began to shift, walls flowing like liquid crystal to reveal the vast cosmos beyond. But this wasn't normal space. It was the intersection of all possible spaces, where every star that ever could exist blazed simultaneously in patterns that hurt to perceive directly. The cascade has begun, Venth said, her crystalline features reflecting infinite realities. You have minutes before the damage becomes irreversible. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, touching the dreams of his companions. Octavia's temporal memories flowed into him, showing him the patterns of cause and effect across deep time. Jin's parallel experiences merged with his awareness, revealing the paths that led to success and failure. Zara's impossible maps overlaid themselves on his mathematical understanding of reality's structure. "I can see it," he whispered. "The equation that holds everything together. And I can navigate us there," Zara added, her consciousness interfacing with navigation systems that existed across multiple dimensions. "The temporal coordinates are stabilizing," Octavia reported, her awareness stretched across past and future. "Simultaneously. And I know which version of ourselves we need to become," Jin concluded, his mind touching the successful parallel iterations of their group. Together, they reached out with their combined consciousness, their dreams becoming a single, impossibly complex thought that rewrote the fundamental equations of existence. The convergence point appeared before them, not as a location, but as a moment of pure possibility, where every choice that had ever been made could be remade. Marcus felt himself dissolving and reforming as they stepped into that impossible moment. Reality folded around them like origami made of space-time itself. For an instant that lasted forever, they were every version of themselves that had ever existed or ever could exist. Then, with a sound like the universe taking its first breath, everything settled into place. Marcus opened his eyes to find himself back in his laboratory, the quantum field generator humming normally, his coffee still warm on the desk. But he remembered everything, the dreams, the aliens, the moment when reality had balanced on the edge of existence. His communication array chimed with incoming messages. 3 other scientists from different parts of the galaxy, all reporting the same thing: shared dreams of impossible rescues and cosmic responsibilities. Dr. Octavia Reeves, writing from the Stellaris Research Station. The chronostones have gone dormant, but I remember what they showed me. Captain Jin Nakamura, transmitting from the Endeavor. No dimensional anomalies detected, but my dreams are still full of parallel possibilities. Zara Okafor, sending from the Pulsar Observatory. Space is stable, but I've kept the maps. Just in case. Marcus smiled and began composing his reply to the group. They had saved everything that ever was or ever could be, and the only proof was their shared memory of dreams that had been loud enough to echo across realities. Somewhere in a healing sanctuary that existed between dimensions, 4 alien beings looked at each other with something approaching satisfaction. "Think they'll remember when it happens again?" Vent asked. Theorem rotated through several philosophical configurations. "They'll dream of it," the entity replied. "And sometimes that's enough."